uh, introduce today's panelists, and I'll start with Beverly Enjoy Soa. She's a language teacher by profession. She speaks French, English, Mandarin, and some Spanish. She has a bachelor's degree in Chinese literature applied to economics and trade, as well as a master's degree in business administration. Beverly lived in China for 9 years. She's a pastor and a worship leader. Our next panelist is Amanda Chifamba. Amanda was born and raised mostly in Zimbabwe, her home country. Her parents worked in Botswana for quite some time, so she ended up studying or being part of her primary education in Botswana. She completed high school in Zimbabwe with a focus on commercial studies. She did her tertiary education in Beijing, China, where she attained a bachelor's in electronic information engineering. Upon graduation, she returned to her home country and worked for the prestigious Liquid Intelligent Technologies for 8 years before relocating to South Africa, where she has been serving as a service delivery manager at another esteemed telecom company for the past 3 years. She holds a Master of Business Administration, Managerial, and a proficiency certificate in Mandarin, both qualifications attained at the University of Zimbabwe. For our third panelist, we have Ifeoma Kausiso Anaike. Ife is an account manager at Huawei Technologies Company Nigeria Limited, with a master's in public management from Tsinghua University. She has extensive experience in the field of finance and is skilled in working with clients to understand and meet their needs while protecting the company's interests. Ifeoma is a dedicated professional who is always looking for ways to improve her skills and knowledge. Fluent in English, she's fluent in French, Mandarin, and Igbo languages. And our final panelist, Ifua Benchua Apiayaboa. Ifua obtained her bachelor's degree in Chinese language in 2011 from Beijing Language and Culture University, Ghana. She's a banker by profession with experience in banking Chinese life corporates in Ghana. Ifua further runs a Chinese language consultancy service privately, carrying out translation, mediation, value chain management services for government agencies, local and Chinese companies. Her hobbies include reading, swimming, and playing tennis. So these are our 4 panelists with comprehensive backgrounds. I'm going to give the floor to the panelists in the order in which I introduced them, just to give them short remarks, and then we're going to start, and then I'll hand it over to you, Florentine, to begin the conversation. Beverly, we'll start with you, then Amanda, let's see, and then...
Well, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on wherever you are in the world. It's such a pleasure to be with you on this webinar, and I believe you are fine, and I believe that we are going to have a wonderful time together as we share our experience in China, our lessons, etc. And I can't wait to hear from everyone, and I hope you enjoy it. So this is just a short greeting. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Amanda.
Hi, everybody. Yes, afternoon, morning, evening. Well, yeah, it's actually, thank you so much. Firstly, thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you for having us here. It's, I'm looking forward to quite a lot of interesting story sharing and everything. You know, when you told us about it, it took me back to those years, and I was thinking, oh wow, China, and also, yeah, this really is going to be an interesting session. Thank you.
Hello. Yeah, hi. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Don't know where you're hearing us from. So it's really a pleasure to be on this panel. And I'm looking forward to sharing and learning from everyone here. And I hope you're going to get one or two things from our discussions here. That's all from me.
And then Ifua, lastly, if she can hear us.
If you have to unmute. Yeah.
Okay. Hello.
Yeah.
Good day to everyone on this webinar. It is a privilege to be called upon to share my experiences, to share our views, the opportunities, our challenges. It's an opportunity I do not take for granted. And thank you to the organizers, and welcome to everybody. And I hope we have a fruitful session.
Yeah.
We can start.
All right. Thank you, Pam. Well, welcome to our panelists. It's brilliant to see brilliant faces. This is our first all ladies edition, and I'm quite excited because we have some powerful ladies on this webinar. And I'm very certain that anyone who is watching and listening in would really take a lot of lessons. So ladies, I would like us to start with why China? What was the story behind you going to China? So we'll start with Bev, and as much as possible, we want everyone to be able to share their experiences. So, and since we are about 4 of us sharing experiences, we want to keep it short and very concise, but the juiciest part of the story is what we want to hear. So maybe Bev will start and let us know why she ended up in China and how. Yes.
Well, I think China's that wasn't really the plan for me on the from the word go. I actually was trying to go to Japan, so I'd started learning Japanese with the hiragana and katakana. But luckily for me, I should say, my mom was working in an educational ministry in our country, and she heard about that Cope scholarship, and she was so crazy about it. She really was pushing me. I was like, my eyes was on going to Japan. So I remember in the first trimester of my high school, the last year of high school, she made me fill the paper, and I honestly did it just because of her, right? So I just filled the paper so she will give me peace. But at the end, actually, I think the Japanese scholarship answer would come around December, which would have been too late, right? And luckily for me, I got the scholarship from China. And it was a kind of double scholarship from my country and the cooperation scholarship of China. And that's how I ended up changing plans to actually end up in Beijing. So that's the long story short. Yeah.
Wow, that's really interesting. Maybe we'll hear Amanda's own and see what are the similarities in some of these stories.
It's
Yeah.
actually similar to Biv. China wasn't actually anyway on my list of the places to go for university. So after high school, I spent a year just looking around and trying to decide what I want to do. I applied in places like Australia and them, and some places I never got responses back. And then I ended up going to Namibia because it had been a year already and I had to go back to school. So I went to Namibia for 1 semester. And then my uncle, my mom's brother, he's late now, but then he was in a position where he had this advantage of getting scholarships in them. And the scholarship came up, and then he just said, Amanda, China, it is. And that's how I ended up in China. So yeah, it was exciting, but then I had mixed feelings about it. But I think that's gonna be in the next session we're gonna talk about. But yeah, that's how I ended up in China. Actually, it was a scholarship that just boom out of nowhere when I had
Wow.
settled somewhere else. So yeah, China it was.
Okay, Ify, what about you?
Yeah, so mine was a bit different because I was already in in final year in the university. I was 19 when I graduated from my first degree. So that was when China was trying to. Oh, I did my first degree in French language and literature, modern European languages, in Nnamdi University, Oka. So that was in 2005 when China was trying to like expand the soft power initiative with the Confucius Institute. So they were looking for universities in Nigeria that would send their lecturers to China to learn the language. So at that time, it was the second year of the program. So they said when I was in final year, they came to our department and said that they were looking to give one scholarship to the best graduating students, either from French language department or African language department. So at that time, I was the best graduating student at that time, but I didn't know that, okay, before then, I didn't have any plans of going abroad to study. I just wanted to do my National Youth Service, because in Nigeria, when you finish your 4 years degree, you go for NYSC, serve the country for a year, then go and do your masters or whatever. So my target was finish my degree in Unizik, go for my NYSC, then take life from there. Because as a first class graduate, you had the privilege to lecture in the university if you want. So I was not really bothered about where I was going to do my job. I actually thought I was going to be a lecturer. So my mind was in, I do NYSC, go for my master's, PhD, will go on and stuff. So when the scholarship came, I wasn't sure I was going to get the scholarship, like I said, and I was in my final year. I needed to nail my exams and come out with the best result I could, so I can maintain the lead. So when eventually I was the best graduate student, the vice chancellor then asked me if I was interested in going to China. So I calculated, if I go to NYSC and come back, I'll be 21, 22, and then the students I'll be teaching, most of them will be older than me. So I said, okay, if I take the scholarship, I go to China, I study Chinese language for 2 years, and then see life, see something new, see something different from Nnamdi Azikiwe University from Nigeria. So I just sent in my application to the Chinese embassy, and that was it. So I saw myself on the plane on August 28th, 2006, going to China to study Chinese language. Yeah, that's my story.
Wow, that's a wonderful story. How being in school, China's dreams, and your dreams coming true in going to China. That's really amazing story. Efwa, let's hear from you.
Hi. Okay, so my journey to China started with obviously, I mean, our parents really have an influence on the decisions we make, after school and all. And I did in secondary school, I did languages. So I did French. I did a Ghanaian language called Twi. Okay, and I passed with distinction. And I mean, all along, my dad realized that I did have a strong ability for language, which I didn't really know at the time. But yes, so after school, I had this urge of really just leaving Ghana, because I felt like the educational system was not, adventurous enough. So we heard of this opportunity at the Chinese embassy to learn Chinese language. So the initial scholarship I got was a diploma in Chinese language. So after I did my 2 years in China, I came back to Ghana in 2008. And then there was a program at the Chinese embassy. So I was invited. I went, I met the Chinese counselor and all the people that, were in authority. And they realized that, I mean, I had picked up nicely. So I applied for a continuous learning, and I was given a bachelor's, a scholarship in Chinese language for my bachelor's degree. So that's how come, yes, I obtained a bachelor's degree in Chinese.
Wow. That's interesting. I remember that meeting in 2008 was when
That was
we
the
met.
first time we met. Yes, Florentine.
That was the first time we met at the Chinese embassy. That's
Yes,
really
yes,
interesting.
yes.
One thing I'm picking from all of your stories is we have family influence, some sort of parental guidance, and also language. The passion for language, learning of languages is running through your story and that's of Ife's story. Now, I want to find out from you all, going to China, how did it feel, your first experience? What were some of the shocks, cultural shocks you got? What were some of the interesting things? How would you say, for those of you who were not really thinking of going to China at all, would you say you regret the experience, or you felt that this was the biggest mistake of your life, or this was the best thing that ever happened to you? Yes, so Bev, we can start with Bev.
Well, me, I really went to China like I want to say like a brand new sheet of paper, all white, not knowing anything. Remember, I was preparing to go to Japan, right? So I had made my research already. When it comes to China, I didn't know anything, even the name of the capital. That's how bad it was, you know. And the only idea I had of China was the movies, the kung fu movies, and them having the hats in the rice field. I did not have any idea about what China looked like at that moment. And being the strong believer I was, I was like, okay, God, I'm in your hand. So let's go and see how things would be. I didn't have so much. I don't know. I wasn't so worried about the whole thing, but I was just skeptical a little bit. I didn't know what to expect. So coming out, I met such a beautiful country, well established, so well developed. And the reception as well from the school was a good one. They were well organized. It was a system that was already running pretty well, and if you're coming from either a developing country or underdeveloped country and you meet a China that you didn't have in mind, definitely that's an upgrade right there, right? The Chinese you were expecting to see in the field of rice and all that. And in a nutshell, because there's more to talk about, I would never say that I would ever regret my time in China. In fact, that's the total opposite. And if they gave me the opportunity, I would choose that again and again over every other country in the world. I would still choose China.
What was your vision of China? Like, what was the picture of China that you had in your mind before you went there?
As I said, the rural China. That's what I was. I couldn't actually, that thing where you can't picture something, but the only image you have is what you saw on TV. You see, the same people, the media has a way of showing a side of Africa, all right, that gives in the Western a certain image of Africa. I only saw the kung fu movies, the Shaolin, the mountains, or the rice, the guys keeping those things on their shoulders, and then the hats. That's all I knew of. I had no idea of what, and I actually didn't do my research. I wasn't bothered. Right, that's how it was.
Great, that's nice. Amanda, would you want to share your experiences?
Okay, so my uncle, the one who got me the scholarship, he tried to prepare me psychologically, like what to expect. And what he told me was like, you expect to see these skyscrapers everywhere, these complicated roads and whatnot. And from where I was coming, there wasn't anything like that. So all the skyscrapers, the buildings, the nice things and all that was just from movies that I knew. So that's the picture of China that I had when I went. And yeah, that is exactly what I saw. Going there for me, it was I was 20 when I went to China. So having lived my whole life in Africa, I just felt life is in Africa. I don't know. I had this picture of like where I'm going. It's like I'm going on stage or something. And then when I go back home, then I'll be 20 again, and then life goes on. It actually took me time to get that in my mind, to say that you're actually living your life. You're 20, you're 21, you're 22, you know, this is life, this is it. It took me time to adjust, or like to the culture difference, the everything was so different. Of course, yes, at the universities everything was organized. There was no like hiccups or any problems or any challenges getting into university and all. But then just the way of living, their way of living, and what I knew, it was totally different. So
What were some of the examples of like some experiences, if you remember any?
the challenges that I had.
No, the examples of their way of life that was different from yours and how you had to adjust.
Just being around people that don't have the skin color as mine, and being in the midst of them, and the way they ate, the way they everything was just so different. There was this disgusting, I'm not gonna say it, but I'm sure we all know it, that disgusting habit of theirs. So when it happened and somebody's next to you, you look at them like, what's going on? But then they continue as if life is normal. Like it's normal. What's wrong? So yeah, those kind of things. And it was just a whole culture shock. Like everything was just a culture shock. So for me, it was really important to get to meet the other Africans, because I related with them. I felt I belong. I felt these are my people, I fit in with them. So it was a challenge. The other challenge that was there was that some students didn't speak English. They were from French speaking countries, Portuguese and all. So amongst ourselves, we couldn't communicate even. So that actually pushed us to learn Chinese quicker. It actually helped us to learn faster, so that we could communicate and joke and hang around. So yeah, that was, if I'm to be asked to go back to China, yo, it's a definite and an undoubted no for me. It was just not such a pleasant experience for me, I would say. Of course, when I went there, I had the excitement, the freedom. It's just gonna be me, or there's no mommy to ask me, where are you this time, and stuff like that. No. But then, with time you settle in, you calm down, and then you start thinking, no, I'm far from home. I'm by myself. I'm all alone. It did help me to grow, but then somehow I feel China stole my, that pre-adult phase, that I needed to be home. I needed to be with family. I needed to be, oh yeah, that's that kind of thing. And missing out on events at home, missing out on things, life happening, and just some mistakes we make, and just decisions we need to make as a pre-adult, and as you step into adulthood and all. So yeah, that's
But would you say that you were able to catch up when you left China, or those experiences didn't really help you at all?
Oh, they helped. They matured me, definitely. I had to mature. And I remember when I came back home, the first week was so weird. I was now just used to seeing all Chinese people around me. Now I'm seeing all these people. They were so big, and just the faces were a bit scary for me. I won't lie. I remember the first time I went into the commercial area, the CBD. Yo, everybody looked so big. I can't imagine. It was like a culture shock back into my own culture, back into my own place. So yeah,
Oh,
but then
wow.
it didn't take me time to adjust back into the way of life back at home. And yeah, I got a job, I think after a month. So that also helped me to like settle and catch up quickly.
That's great. That's great. Ify,
Yeah.
let's hear your story. Your first few.
Okay, so
Yes, go ahead.
so for me, because okay, I live in Onitsha,
What
and then
you?
then
Please go ahead.
my dad, I live in Onitsha. Then my dad is a businessman. He was an importer and exporter. So he had already been going to Southeast Asia, so Thailand, Hong Kong. Then in 2004, he started going to China, but mainly Guangdong province. So he used to bring these calendars January to December. It had different cities. So it had pictures, you know, they will put their best foot, the best pictures of the different cities. So I had those calendars. And then before I left for China, I went to the embassy. So they gave me some books about China. So I read some things about China. So I kind of knew what to expect to some extent. So I learned how to say ni hao on the plane, thank you, and bye bye. Those three words. So I felt that was enough for me. So whatever you're saying after the ni hao, that's your business. So when I got to China, um, that was the second time I was leaving my country because I did my third year in school, year abroad in Togo. So I kind of knew that apart from Onitsha in Nigeria, Abuja in Nigeria, there were other countries, there were other cities that had their own peculiarities. So it wasn't really, I didn't really find it shocking because, like, when I went to Togo, they had this break, I think from 12 to 2 or what time? I think from
Yeah.
12 to 2. Banks even
Yeah.
also go on breaks. So it wasn't new. In China, it was from 11:45. You see students already leaving classes to go to canteen. And then 12 to 1, 12 to 1:30, you can do anything and go scot-free because everybody's having theater. So that would have been a shock to me, but because I already had that in Togo, so it wasn't too much of a shock. So I don't think I had, it was only the language that was an issue for me. Every other thing was okay. I think I expected what I got. So it wasn't really because I prepared. I was well prepared.
Was
I
there
should say.
anything about the culture, the people? What was the thing that really was a highlight for you in your maybe your first year or your experience in China?
Okay. In my first, to be honest, okay, because I wear glasses. So I don't know whether it's because I wear glasses, but it was difficult recognizing who was who. So I felt everybody was the same, like all the Chinese when they pass. So I had issues. Like I meet a Chinese downstairs. The those people that the you know those security, those保安in the hostels, right? The people that will take your passport and your passport photo. Yeah, so I recognized one of the ladies, or rather, I felt I recognized one of the ladies. So the next day, I saw somebody that looked like her, and I was saying hi, and she was not like she didn't even respond to me, and so all my hello ni hao, it wasn't. So I felt maybe they like to mind their business, so I stopped greeting entirely. And then this thing that you know from our place, when you mistakenly step on somebody, you say sorry or you say excuse me or something. It's not like that with them. So, well, that was just the only thing. Maybe everybody just minds their business, even when they step on you. When you say hello, good morning, they don't respond and stuff like that. I think that's the only thing. And then the inability of differentiating faces. I felt
Faces.
even with movies, yes, I felt it was one person doing everything. And yeah, my teachers, it took time to know who was who. Yeah,
Wow.
that was the thing. But like I think after the first 2 weeks, first 3 weeks, I started seeing differences between the Chinese and stuff. Yeah.
Great. Wow.
That's
Efwa,
just
let's hear
about it.
from you. What was your story?
Okay, so I was ready for an adventure. So from Ghana to my trip, mind you, I was just 19 years when I embarked on this China journey. And I was just, hungry for something else, like an adventure, something to just, make me feel like I'm living, So the trip from Ghana to China, at Dubai, I had to transit at Dubai, right? And I missed my flight. So, I mean, I begged them. They said, no, you're late. Because, I mean, the time difference, I was just confused. I was alone. So I was a bit confused with the time difference. And so I missed my flight. But, I mean, luckily enough, I was put on another flight too. So, I mean, I guess that was the beginning of that China adventure. So when I got to China,
I think we lost Ifwa, right?
Yeah.
country,
Okay. She's back.
everything was. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Sorry.
we can hear you. Go on.
Yes.
Go
So
on.
I was impressed with the infrastructure. I was, happy to finally be in a country where, I mean, we always saw on TV and laughed at their tonation and laughed at the way they looked and all that. But the only Chinese I knew was ni hao, and obviously that wasn't enough. Because once you got into the country, nobody spoke English. And you had to just, find your way around, whatever, on campus especially. It gave me the opportunity to want to learn the language fast and just, get immersed in the culture. And one thing that I liked that I didn't find strange was their food, because I love Chinese food. I mean, almost every month our parents would take us to a Chinese restaurant to eat. So we learned how to use a chopstick. So I just loved their food. I mean, whatever they gave me, I would just eat it, from breakfast to lunch to supper. I was just excited. My experience in class was one of the things that I really remember. I remember when we started the Chinese language. So the language, I mean, as a 19-year-old, we were made to start, learning language like we were in nursery, right? You had to get the tones, you had to get the pinyin, you had to get the pronunciations right, all that. So that was, a shocker. But yes, I mean, I was there, so I just had to take advantage of the opportunity. So I remember it got really tough for me in 2 weeks into the program, and I remember wanting to just give up because I was like, no, this is just impossible. I can't believe, I mean, what's this, because I thought I wasn't going to perform well. And then there was just this one time that we had an exercise. My teacher then, who was my very favorite teacher, Hao Lao Shi, she marked my work, right? We had an exercise, she marked my work. And then she wrote very good. And then she called me and she told me that, wow, you do very well. You do very well in this language. It just changed my whole outlook, my whole perception of myself and my ability to pick up the language. And I mean, that was it. That was sort of like the launch, you know, into the whole experience. So yeah, I mean, China was life-changing. I just loved the whole experience. You know, the culture was different. The habits, as Amanda said, was different and was hilarious at certain points. And we just stare at each other sometimes as Africans and we just wonder, like, what is going on here? But I mean, it was all part of it. So I was just open for it, and we met, you know, other Africans, which I thought was also a very interesting bit of it, because, you know, in Africa, I never recalled ever meeting a Zambian or a Zimbabwean or a Gabonese or, you know, my own African people. You see, so it was also one of the things I really appreciated about China, because it brought so many people from different backgrounds, different countries, different languages, Africans and other foreigners together. And you really saw what Africa, especially for me, what Africa was like, you know? So it did not only give me exposure to the Asian culture or to the European culture, as I had some European school classmates, but it made me understand Africa even better. It made me understand Africans better and realize that we are one, you know, people, but we differed in so many ways, you know, the way we thought, the way we reasoned, you know, and the way we were brought up. I mean, it was also a culture shock for me, you know, within the African community. And I give me that opportunity again, and I'll just jump to it.
I see there's a lot of contrast that we are having today.
Yes, very exciting.
Amanda doesn't like her experience, and before it was all ready to have a brand new experience.
I gave me the opportunity to build some very good, you know, friendships, as we, I mean, all of us all have, with Amanda, you know, Ify, yourself, Flo, Beverly. I mean, some lifelong relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want us to move to the next thing. If I started a bit of it, you know, I'm getting, if I ended on the social network that China provided for every one of us. So we have this social capital that you can always fall on in times of need. And even though some of us wouldn't relive that experience, and some of us thought that was all that the experience that we would always relive again, I see that there is a good combination of experiences that we are having. And I also see that the cultural immersion story is really different from one person to the other. If I started something talking about the classroom experience, I want us to talk a bit about the education in China. I believe all of you went to China because of education and not business or anything. How was the education compared to what you would have had in your country? What's the experience that you had? Do you feel that this experience that you went to have in terms of the education met, like, you were happy about it? Coming back home, how has it influenced what you're doing, who you are, and where you are? So what are some of the differences from education in your country, education in China? What is the perception of people? There's a lot of questions, but I want you to just look at the education in all in. Let's talk a bit about that. So we'll start with Bev.
All right. Okay. I would have loved to talk about how my stay in China has really enriched me in terms of relationship, you know, from you know, the various backgrounds, various country. But I will just put the question on the table first. China's educational system and way of educating a student is totally different than what I knew, at least in Gabon or in the French system. In the French system, for example, you really have to work very hard to have your mark. I mean, it literally feels like the teachers want you to suffer, right? You really have to work hard. It's not easy like that. If you ask any student from the university, even high school, there is that tendency. When you come to China the first time and you have to do your first year, your language year, first of all, because the system is well organized, the books are well made, it makes it easy for you to learn everything. Now, I had the privilege to, I had the privilege to do a bachelor degree as well, and then a master's degree. I have to say that maybe because of my ability to learn languages easily, the bachelor was not difficult because it was focused for me on Chinese language, even though I added also economics and trade. Okay, but then when I got into the masters, that was a whole different thing. Okay, and I would say that that one was not a very good experience for me, and I felt like I wish I had the opportunity to redo my master's in a different program. Okay, because what you learn in terms of language during the language year or even during that bachelor, it wasn't enough for a master's degree. So I ended up doing more translation, and then there was no the negative side I experienced was that the teachers in the Chinese theater, if I can call it like that, or class, would focus more on the Chinese students and put the foreign students on the side, not really focus on them. We had peculiar needs and they did not really do well in helping us. Others had an attitude of giving points easily. Like you will pass, just, I don't know if it is a target of rate of succeeding that they wanted, or I don't know. But the way I would have wished to have been challenged and helped in an educational system, I didn't feel like I got that. I got that.
Okay. Yeah. Beverly, you are a francophone, but you speak very good English. Did you come to China speaking English in addition to French, or how did this happen?
All right. So yes, I'm a French speaker. I didn't have the level of English that I have now but I had I had some rudiments because we also learn English at school, but honestly, it wasn't enough. But as I think it was Ify or maybe anybody else on the panel who also mentioned it, the fact that you meet a colleague or a roommate, because for some of us, we had to be placed in dormitories, and you don't choose your roommates, they choose it. I'm yet to see those who actually choose their roommates. So you can end up with somebody from I don't know, Asia, Vietnamese. I think some of my roommates, I had a Mongolian, I had somebody from Guinea-Bissau, so she was speaking Portuguese. I had quite a number of roommates. And so if you don't yet speak Mandarin, your common ground is English. That English, if you forgot it, you will go and look for it. And so automatically, even though you have not come to learn English, for us, I believe that's the kind of the safety, the thing you run to be able to communicate between you guys as foreign students. And then in the books as well, if you remember, everybody, the second language in the Chinese book for learning was English. So if you're a French speaker like me, the translation is written in English. What would you do? You have to take your English as well. That's how you learn.
Wow, great. Amanda, share your story on the educational aspects, how you grasp everything, how different it is from your country.
Okay, so the very, very first day of Chinese language, we were all seated in class, and then the teacher came in, and she already started speaking Chinese. And I'm like, okay, this is gonna be interesting. I had no clue. I think I only knew ni hao or just nothing really, less than 5 words, 5 Chinese words. And then she gets in class, she's asking for help to carry the books, but she's already speaking in Chinese. And then there were other guys who could speak the language and they understood what she said, but then she tried to translate it to English as well. But you know, their English wasn't all that good. They were also learning English from us as we were learning Chinese from them. So it started out yeah, but then I was excited to be there. So it wasn't, the Chinese language itself wasn't really a challenge for me. And then now when I started my major, it was a whole new your experience, like something so out of this world. The Chinese teacher, you know how fast they speak,
Yeah.
and they're there. You're in the physics class, the fractions. They say the denominator first and then the numerator, and you're like, you're trying to, okay, I understand he said 2, he said 3, but then it's the other way. And you know, you're just trying to understand the language, hear what he's saying first, and then you translate to understand the concept of what's being taught. So that was a major, major challenge for, I want to believe I'm speaking for a lot of us. It was a major challenge for us. And then initially we got some students who were willing to help us, like after class and all that, but then also their English was limited, so at least they were speaking slower, so would, you know, you take time to understand. But then somewhere around the second year of my major, I remember I missed 2 courses that I had to retake, and that really, that was a huge blow for me. And I believe my mind shut down, like you see, I was affected so much that, okay, I'm struggling for one to just hear what they're saying, and then now to understand what's being taught was a whole new chapter. So yeah, it it was, I feel I could have learned more had I been back home, or had it been in a language that I understood. Like Dave was saying, that we had actually some courses that were in English, even the textbooks were in English. But then for 2-3 weeks, it's the Lao Shi teaches in English, but then after that, it's back to Chinese. So the focus really on foreign students wasn't as much as it was for their local students. And the pass mark, ours was way lower, and you know, we leveraged a lot on assignments. Those are the things that really like pulled us up to get to the pass mark that was already low. So yeah, in terms of education itself, I feel I could have learned way, way more. I feel there are a lot of concepts in my degree that I missed, and it was just language barrier.
Yeah, great.
But then
Ify,
otherwise,
sorry.
In
Go
terms of
ahead.
facilities and all, it was up to start everything, like it was top class, and they have all these facilities and the environment and everything, but just the method of delivery.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. Ify, let's go to you.
Okay, so for me, I think I have I think my own experience was very different from every other person because I had already done my first degree back home. And I think I was also very lucky. I was sent to Beijing Language and Culture University. And they started with a book. They were trying to write a new book, Chongonjilu. So they put all of us I don't know how they did the choosing. So they put all of us in a class. And it was the teachers that wrote that series, that Chongonjilu, that was our teacher. So they were trying to see how to perfect the book they were writing. So there was no English at all in the book. From the pain, so the book didn't have characters. The first book we used didn't have any characters. It just had the 50 essential characters. So from the beginning, it was just pinyin, like how to introduce yourself. Everything was in pinyin. So within 1 month, we I think within the first 2 weeks, we had finished that first book that didn't have any characters. Then the second book they introduced was now Chongoji Pian, but like Chongonjilu, it has different stages, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the first stage, no characters, no hands. Then the second stage, it had English and it had Pin and hands, but still no English. So I was forced to learn the language, and I didn't need to translate. I didn't need to translate the word to English first and stuff. So I feel that was the best way to learn the language, because I did French language and literature in Unizik, in Nnamdi School University. And I remember the way they taught us. We had some teachers coming to teach us the language in Igbo, not even in English. And we had people that weren't Igbo in my class. So, and it was only when I got to Togo for my year abroad that I learned how to speak. When I was in Nigeria, I could only like read, as in, but I couldn't speak. I could read. If I hear you speak, I know you made a mistake, but I couldn't speak. It was only when I got to Togo, when we had a language environment, that I could actually speak. But in China, with the book that they were using, I was forced to write and speak and engage people. That I remember this guy from Cote d'Ivoire, Noel. When he saw my book after my first term, he couldn't believe I had just been in China for 1 term, because my writing was very neat, and the progress I had made in 1 semester was almost at par with what he had done for 3 semesters. Yeah, so I wouldn't say the language, the experience was bad. And I did my master's. It was an English taught program in Tsinghua University. So I think it also has to do. It also had to do with the university and the course, the choice of study. So, like, I know that there is a very big difference. Like, if you're going to study something like um, communication engineering or forestry or something, it's better to go to the school that specializes in that. And then if they have an English taught program, that's the best. But if they don't have an English taught program, you just have to have a very good level of Chinese before you go. But the problem we had with our own set was that most people, they just had 1 year language program, which was definitely not okay. I'm sure most people that went to do their masters didn't have HSK level 8. Though I had HSK level 8 at my third semester. So I'm just imagining how those that did 1 year Chinese could have been able to cope. So I think with our set, those of us that went to China, that 2006 to 2000 pre-Olympics, yes, I think I should use that word. Those of us that went to China pre-Olympics, we had it tough. Because definitely it was known, the education, the way they chose the universities for us, and the way they did the lecturing stuff, it was actually not it for those that did their courses in Chinese. But for me that did my course in English, I had it very well, very nice. I had the best lecturers.
I think you were blessed to have had your course, your master's course in English, because I hear from the other two that the language level was a challenge. What was your experience?
Yes.
Okay, so I did a bachelor's in Chinese language. Okay, so mine was a language degree. So so it wasn't that much of a challenge. From the beginning, our teachers spoke only Chinese. Whether you liked it or not, she was speaking Chinese, and we were just forced to learn the language quickly. Okay, so I think the first few weeks, we did, as Ify also said, we had a book in Pinyin. So Pinyin is the letters that are combined to pronounce the Chinese characters. If I can just give that description. So after about 2 or 3 weeks, we moved on to the Chinese characters. So we were forced, we were challenged, to learn the language. And I think it was a good model, especially for language. Once you have no other choice, you don't have English, you don't have French to be able to learn the language, and it's just Chinese that's presented to you. Yeah, it gives you the opportunity to learn faster. And because of the thorough way they taught, I think I think Chinese generally, the structure of Chinese education is forceful. Okay, even for the locals, you realize that they are really challenged, they are really pushed to be the best. And it's the same experience they gave to us. So for the language, I think that it was a perfect model. For the language, I think it was an excellent course. And within no time, we were writing Chinese characters. I remember we had these notepads where we had to, practice Chinese characters, thousands of them. So, for example, Ni Hao, okay, the character has, you had to sort of repeat the writing about 1,000 times on one page. That was your homework. So, so gradually then you got to know the characters, you get to recognize the characters. And then we had to write exams with the characters, So it didn't give you any opportunity to relax. You just had to get in there. After my first year, all the examinations were in Chinese characters. So you were presented with the pinyin and the characters, and then the English translation. So that also helped a lot. Being an English speaker, it helped a lot. But yeah, the opportunity to also travel, to see the different parts of the country, to sort of situate the experiences in your notebooks, like so they will teach you 上有天堂，下有苏杭, and then so these are places in China, right? Hangzhou,
yeah,
上有天堂，下有
Suzhou, Hangzhou.
Suzhou and Hangzhou. So these are places in China that we learned in our books. So, with the opportunity that we had to go to visit these places, the education became real to us. It became real to us. What we're learning in the textbooks, we're actually experiencing it. So it was an interesting time, Whatever you learned, one day, in class, we'll learn some interesting phrase, and then you meet your friend in the elevator, and then you try it out, and like you were just taught, right? And I was like, yeah. So it was like an everyday adventure for me, because it was a combination of a lot of things, and the opportunity that we were given to learn it fast, with the opportunity to also travel the country. It was priceless.
Well, ladies, I think those were great experiences. I'm going to hand over to Pam for subsequent questions. I don't know if the next 30 minutes will be enough, but I'm very sure that we can extend it a bit if you are willing. But Pam, you have the floor. Please go ahead.
you. I've thoroughly enjoyed the stories conversation so far, and I hope you can all hear me clearly.
If you can raise your voice a bit, yes.
I'll try. My next question sort of flows from what Ifeoma was saying previously, and what I've learned from the conversation so far is that most of you were on scholarship to China. What I've learned, the narrative that is being pushed about people on scholarships to China has been that there have been limited courses. They don't have the opportunity to choose what they want to learn, and there are limited courses for them to pick from. So my question would be, since at the time that you went, compared to now where lots of African students are going to China, it wasn't the same before, and Chinese universities were relatively known. What was the selection process like for you in determining where you'd want to go study? Yes, so the selection criteria, what it was like in choosing a university for the course that you were going to study, and if what you actually studied was what you wanted or it was the option that was available to you. So we can start with Amanda.
Okay, in terms of criteria of the university which you're to go to, that was not left for us. That was, well, for me, I didn't have that option to choose. I was just told for the first year, you're gonna go to Beijing Language and Culture University, and then for your major, you're gonna go to this university. It was already set out for me. So when I went there, I was just told, yeah, you go here and then next year. So that's basically how it is. I understand now it's a bit different in terms of the language that's being taught. Like if you were saying that year of learning Chinese, it's just the basic communication, you know, conversational Chinese. You go to the hospital, how do you tell them my tummy hurts or something like that? How do you tell the time, and how do you read a book and things like that? But then it's never really concentrated on the major that you're gonna do, because there's certain words or there's certain jargon that's related to different fields. So like I was saying, when you go in class, when I started my major, in physics, I didn't know that a fraction, that's how it's said or stuff like that. So all this jargon that's already in English, it's already something new to me. So now I hear this word, I don't, you know, resonate with it in Chinese, and then I have to go up and, you know, search up the meaning and stuff like that. But yeah, in terms of where to go or which university really concentrates on your major, we had that laid out for us, for me.
Pam, did you call me?
I was thinking Ifeoma, but you can have the floor. Let us know what you think. The selection process for you.
Oh, all right. On my end, because well, it was done from the start. I had a chance to go to the embassy. There was these papers you could fill, and I remember there was a big notebook they had with the names of the university, with the description, how long the university was in existence and stuff. So you could choose 3 universities, actually put the names of those 3 universities in the application paper, and that was sent. And I think the university would either accept or whatever, but the system some way somehow would make the final decision. Yeah, mind you that these are applications that comes from around the world. Some universities have a ceiling of students they can accommodate per year. So you would not, even if you choose a certain university, you would have to, it would have to respond to their capacity and their requirement. At my country's level, of course, they will look at your grades. Yes. So for you to even obtain the scholarship, all right. So they want to send their best students. But when it comes to China, back then, you still had a level of choices that was made at the level of the university. The university has to accept you. The university has to have space for you, right? So based on all those criterions, even if you have chosen, you might be sent somewhere else, either because there's no space or maybe you don't correspond to what they want. I remember I chose the best university, Beijing Dashi and Tsinghua Dashi, because I was looking at the oldest, all right, with all the varieties of courses they were offering. I believe that once it's an old university, they have the experience. When I got there, I realized that Beijing Dash and Tsinghua Dash, it's not easy to enter in such a university and all that. Yeah, yeah. So
would you say you studied what you chose to study, or were you just given that to study? Like, did you?
No. I choose. Yeah. So for me, I first wanted to do biochemistry. Okay, I wanted to do biochemistry, and so first year of language, and then after that you continue. And at the end I was sent to Huagong Dashui, all right, for that, which is also a very good university. In fact, very specialized in that Huagong Dashui, especially for chemistry and stuff. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. What about Efwa? What about you? What was the selection of Chinese universities like?
So my school, Beijing Language and Culture University, is the #1 Chinese teaching university in China. And the books, the books that we use are written by the lecturers in the school. And these are the same books that are circulated all over the country. So it was the best Chinese language school. I didn't have, I was given that option and I chose it. I didn't have any, I didn't have to choose. I was just, it was proposed to me and I accepted it. So once I put in my application, of course, I had to go through the whole admission process, and that was done, and I was given the opportunity. Yeah,
That's great.
that's about it.
He aligned with what you wanted to study, so in the end, it was like a perfect match.
Sorry, Tom, I didn't hear you on that.
Saying that the university aligned with what you were wanting to study. So
yes, it was perfect.
Okay.
Yes.
What about you, Filma? What about you? Who are the only STEM graduate?
So yeah, so when I was in Nigeria, I applied to Beijing 3Y Beijing Foreign Languages University BFS Beijing Foreign Studies 3Y, that's right. Yes, Beijing Foreign Studies University. Yes, because I had a Nigerian that was studying Chinese language there. So he told me I should choose that when I was applying. So I chose that, but I don't know how they gave me Beijing Language and Culture University. But I'm glad. I thank God. I thank goodness that was where they sent me to. But when I was applying for my master's, I was in Beijing when I applied for my master's in Tsinghua University. I specifically chose Tsinghua University, and I didn't have a scholarship for that. I was prepared to pay out of pocket because I got to know, I felt that studying international development at that time was what I really wanted to do. Yeah, actually, that was my passion. Yeah, so Tsinghua University had Masters in International Development. They just started, so they had announced it online. So I submitted my applications, wrote a very powerful personal statement, and then waited to be called back for interview and whatever. And at that time, it was during the Olympics, so I don't know whether my being a Beijing Olympics volunteer and a torchbearer, whether it had to do with whether it influenced their decision to give me the admission or not. I don't know. But when they gave me the admission, they gave me Beijing government scholarship, so I didn't need to pay for tuition. But I chose Tsinghua. It wasn't given to me. I applied for Tsinghua University, and yeah, I got it. So yeah,
Right. Right.
I don't know
I
if
also,
that answers your question.
it does. It does. I see that most of you are back home, and you're working in the corporate. Most of you are working in the corporate world, back in your various homes. So what I would want to know is, do you think that coming back here with your Chinese education, did that help in any way? Was that crucial? Was that key to attaining the employment that you currently have? How important was your Chinese education in you achieving or attaining whatever positions that you currently have in terms of your employment? You can start with Bev.
All right. If it's about what I'm doing currently, definitely my bachelor's degree and obviously still my experience in the master's degree, which has deepened my level of Chinese. It has definitely helped. Right now, I'm a teacher. I am fully into language, right? So language teaching, tutoring, coaching, whatever. So yeah, in that sense, it is. My original idea, though, was to be more in business. That's why I added the master's degree, all right, in business administration, which will make me work more with, companies at a managerial level, if I could say. And for that aspect, coming back to Africa, you have the chance from the side where I am, you have the chance with your Chinese background to work with a Chinese company, but usually it's merely to be at just maybe a translator, an assistant, something like that. Not so much in the depths of the running of the company. That's the aspect that, it could be a bit different for those who are in the technology, the Huawei and the rest, maybe. Who have that technological background and maybe the science. It could be different, right? Because I found that Chinese people are very protective. I've worked with a couple of companies, Chinese companies, and you still feel that you are the foreigner and you are not so let in the system as you should. You do the job of being the bridge between them and the local because of the language, right? You can speak English, you can speak XYZ, but really the depths of what runs the company, your opportunity to grow in a company and to know the various sides of it so that you improve. From my side, I didn't see that. Now, the local companies, let's say if you're in a French-speaking country, will you work for the government? Will you work for a local business anyway? They don't always need Chinese, right? So that's where your major itself, the knowledge, that specialty you have learned will be relevant. And if you have loopholes in it, all right. I've heard, for example, doctors who have learned in China and they meet doctors who have learned in their countries, all right, and they feel like there is a lapse. All right, they feel a bit left behind in some things because maybe they didn't have certain exposure, a certain depth of knowledge of the major they have learned. Yeah. So I hope I have responded well. If I've not, please just let me know and I'll do an add.
You have.
Thank you.
Amanda.
Yeah.
For me, I haven't really applied Chinese that much. It's mostly people who are just fascinated by the fact that I speak Chinese. And I was in China, I learned in China and stuff like that. But then for the companies that I've worked for, I haven't really applied it. Just that maybe in some meetings, because there are Chinese customers, so they just, well, with Liquid, the first company I worked for, they let me sit in their meetings just to make sure there's no language barrier, and if the Chinese people start talking in their language, then we get to know what they're saying and stuff like that. But then mostly no, I'm not really applying it, like really putting it into use. Is just mostly to conversate with Chinese customers, or yeah, just to assist with translations, to make sure that nothing is lost in translation with the Chinese, but not really.
That going to school or like having a Chinese education background
Yeah.
helped in terms of your search for employment when you came home. Was it as accepted because, or was it key in securing that job?
It wasn't really a barrier. It wasn't really considered. Like, to say I have education in a foreign country or compared to the local, and no, it wasn't really. There was just a system of theirs, especially when I came here to South Africa, that they need to evaluate to say the degree that I have, to what level is it compared to their local education system. But then it wasn't a barrier. I didn't have any challenge with that at all.
Right, thank you. Then we'll go to Efua and then Omar.
Yes. Okay, so after school, my first job was at a hotel, a Chinese hotel, China State Hualong. And I was supposed to be I was the translator, you know, in the whole, company. So I was doing translation, I was doing document translation, and also verbal, interpretation. So that was for a few months, and then I got the opportunity to join China Africa Development Fund. So China Africa Development Fund is a Chinese fund. China Development Bank created to invest in Africa. Okay, so in various parts of the continent. So the West African office was being commissioned, and I had the opportunity to join the team that organized that program. So after that, I got the opportunity to join the CAD Fund team. At CAD Fund, I was responsible for the administration of the whole, office. I was an interpreter and a document translator as well. And then I also did the accounting. So it wasn't really accounting, it was more of the administrative part of accounting. So whatever expenses we made, I had to, type it out in Chinese and print out the receipts. Attach the receipt to the sort of like describe the expense. And then we had a way of, arranging it. So it was more of an admin role. I was an administrative secretary. So after 3 years of working with China Africa Development Fund, I had the opportunity of being part of bringing in some major investors, such as Africa World Airline, which has a Chinese partner, Sunon Asogli power plant, which also has Sunon investors who came in to partner with the Ghanaian entity, SAS. And then, yeah, so a couple more. Yeah, so that experience, my Chinese, degree definitely, or my Chinese ability definitely came to play. It was, however, at the intermediary level. So, learning Chinese. So I studied Chinese language, the business major. So in school, I studied the terms, I studied the structures, etc. So it really came to play in my roles. Okay. So I sort of advanced, it's different from studying it and actually applying it. So as I started, I gradually, learned a few more things on the ground. It wasn't, I didn't know everything from the start. Once you get into the industries, then you pick up, a few things here. You pick up the vocabulary in an industry, in a sector. So gradually, I was given the opportunity to build up, momentum, build up vocabulary, build up confidence in the use of the language in business. So I was also given the opportunity 3 years after CAT Fund in EcoBank, okay, in banking. So the China desk. So we basically managed the Chinese portfolio. So we had a huge Chinese state-owned companies like China Harbor. We had China Railway. Yeah, so all of these companies to manage. So that even further had me, or forced me to use the language and to even, grow more in the skill, in the competence. So my in corporate, I've really had to use the language a lot, and I still do. So I'm still, in banking, and every day my services are needed. Either somebody cannot understand what the Chinese customer is saying, or something had to be translated or explained. Winning Chinese customers over, so I still do have a use of the language. Apart from my corporate life, I started a consultancy that enabled me to also do translation and interpretation work for some local government institutions like Ghana Free Zones. Yes, Ghana Free Zones, and some private institutions as well. So what I'm, apart from just the interpretation and the translation of documents, it's now advancing more to the value chain management. So basically, if a customer wants to start, a corporation, like start purchasing some goods or start manufacturing some of their goods, okay, in China, from the start to the finish, the management of that whole process. So the from getting a suitable Chinese company to provide the service or to provide the goods, okay, getting into the detail of what my customers here in Ghana require. So the specification of their goods, making sure that that message is carried across well, and making sure that the Chinese side understand perfectly what the requirements are, to ensuring that they actually carry out the work as required by the local entity. Okay, and then further, with the help of Flo, I got a few people in China that could do inspection. So once the goods were produced, they then came in to do the inspection there. So it was sort of like a whole cycle, and that I'm still building, I'm still getting experienced in, and still building, still trying to get a picture of what the whole opportunity could look like, But yeah, so apart from that, whole experience and application of the language in corporate and also in my private business, what I really look forward to doing, and I think ASCIR has already begun that work, is to really be part of negotiations, to be part of decision making when it comes to China-Africa relations, when it comes to China-Africa business and facilities, credit facilities that are given to us. Because what I realize is that we do have a huge gap when it comes to actually negotiating something better for Africa. It looks like the Chinese have an upper hand in this, and I really seek to sit at the table of decision making and like change, because some of these things do have to change. And I see that, Pam, you're doing a lot of work with the ASCIR, and I think it's laudable. And hopefully, once we all have this conversation and we are all, in on the idea that we have for Africa, with regards to China-Africa relations, and we will get better deals for Africa, because it's very necessary. Yes.
Thank you. Move on finally to Ife.
Yeah, for me, so when I came to Nigeria to do my NYSC, right, I had to teach. I was teaching at the International School of Lagos, which was inside University of Lagos, which was part of the Confucius Institute. So yes, when I finished my NYSC, no, I was on maternity leave because I was pregnant. Huawei came to the university to look for Nigerians that knew the language, that wanted to join Huawei. So for me, it's that Huawei was intentional about employing Nigerians that that had studied in China, not necessarily that knew the language, but that had studied in China, that know how Chinese work. You agree with me that Chinese, they are very hardworking, and if you compare your work ethics to, as in people that have studied in China, if you compare their work ethics to other people that like other Nigerians, for example, there is actually a gap. So I know when I have something to do, I try to put in all my best, whether I'm paid extra or not. I just make sure my job is done, but it's not necessarily that same way for other people. So you will definitely see that there is a difference with Chinese trained professionals with our locals. So the language I have, I would say, is like a blessing and also like a curse. Because some people, okay, when I joined Huawei, I joined as a project finance specialist, but I grew on the job. I knew I had a lot of things to learn. I had so many things. I had so many sleepless nights. I was burning the midnight candles, but most of my colleagues at the beginning, they didn't see all that. They just felt I was being promoted and getting everything I was getting because I knew the language. So they felt it was just my Chinese language that was carrying me as far as I was going. But you see, they didn't see the part where I was burning midnight candles to learn things I didn't know about. Because I'm an account manager now, but I came in as a project finance specialist. I didn't know anything about the debit, the credit debit, all those things. I had to learn on the job, right? And I had to keep the job because I didn't apply to come into Huawei. They came to pick me, and I didn't want to disappoint the people that took me in. So I had a lot of pressure. I had to impress those that employed me, right? But my colleagues, I'm not sure they saw that part. So that's why I say that the Chinese language I have is like a blessing, and is like
If we lost.
Yeah, I think we lost her.
all to my colleagues,
Oh,
and I already get the news, and then I share the news, or I call others.
if you're still there.
Oh, we lost.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, she's there.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. We lost you at some point.
Okay, yeah. So I call them to order, or so sometimes I find myself fighting battles I shouldn't be fighting because a Chinese is saying something a Chinese is not supposed to be saying, or I am being called to intermediate between a Chinese and a local that shouldn't be my business because I was not there when you were contracting the business or contracting the deal, and then a fight has erupted, and then you're calling me as an intermediate that I'm not being paid for. So yeah, generally I would say it's a blessing. Yeah, but then it depends on how you want to see it. But I wouldn't exchange this skill I have for anything else in the world. No, the language, because it's like a barrier. Like you're like an intermediate. You're like an intermediary between A and B, and you're like a bridge, right? You see yourself being like an ambassador to Nigerians about Chinese Huawei, and then to Chinese about Nigerian Huawei. Yeah, so I wear many caps. Yeah.
So my final question, then we go on to the people's comments, closing this time, would be, this is actually directed to Amanda and you, Ify. So considering the fact that China wasn't really your first choice, it wasn't, I think the recurring theme was China wasn't people's first choice. And I'm thinking it was a reflection of a general perception of people towards Chinese education. You can't hear me.
Yeah, if you can't hear, you will. If you are muted, we are reading your lips.
I couldn't hear her. I wasn't hearing what she was saying.
Hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, please.
Yes, I would say that my next and final question would go to you and Amanda, because considering the fact that the recurring theme was that nobody's first choice was a Chinese university, and I think it's a wider general perception at the time of Chinese education. So I'm thinking, in your various countries, looking at the perception now, I mean, then to the perception now, do you think that there's been a shift?
Yes.
And what do you think is doing right to
Yes,
attract more?
it's been a shift. So presently now, people apply directly. Okay, so most people that go to China to study now, they are not going on scholarships. So most people that are going to China, most people I know now that are going to China to study, they are going as paid students. They pay by themselves. It's out of pocket. So they do the applications by themselves. It's no more the Chinese Scholarship Council giving them the universities they want to go to. So some that are scholarship students also apply to the universities of their choice and request for scholarship. So it's definitely different from what we had pre-Olympics, and is way better now because most universities now have international colleges. Yeah, so it's better now, if you ask me. Most Nigerians I know that are in China now either applied to the universities by themselves and requested for scholarships, or they are self-paying. Yeah, so it's very different from where we were when we went. Yeah.
And do you think that people are more accepting of Chinese education? Because really it was more Western Chinese, but now do you think that people's perceptions have changed?
Okay, so now is different from what we have then, because now most people, they know about university rankings, right? The top universities in the world. So they try to choose like maybe Hong Kong University or Tsinghua University, Peking University, or Shanghai Jiaotong Daxue, all those top universities. Everybody knows now to choose like Ivy League universities, right? So they know that just like how we have Harvard, MIT, Oxford, they have those universities also in China. And because of the cost, you understand that education in China is a bit cheaper than what you would have in the Western universities. So most people that would want to go to China to study, they would choose the Ivy League universities in China over what they would get in US, because they would look at their pockets, right? And leaving Nigeria first, I think anybody who wants to leave Nigeria first, get the first degree, and then go maybe to US, to UK, to Canada for their master's or PhD. I think it's basically what most people are doing now.
Amanda, what about you? What's the situation like in Zimbabwe? Or what was it like, and what are the differences?
I think there's always been a balance, even pre-Olympics. Because when I was there were also number of students who were there out of their own accord, like it wasn't on scholarship. They were paying out of their own pockets for every level, undergrad, masters, or even PhD. And also the students who go there on scholarship have the opportunity to renew or extend the scholarship from undergrad to do masters and all that. But then there always has been other students who go there on their own accord, especially, well, more so now that economically Zimbabwe was open to business to the Asian countries. So having also, to answer I think your next question, if it helps to leverage anyhow, yes it does, because we have a lot of Chinese investing in Zimbabwe, mines and just any other business. So having studied in China, it's actually somewhat an advantage if you can speak the language as well. So yeah, there are scholarships, and there are those who go on their own accord who actually choose China. Unbelievable, hey? But yeah, they choose China. Yeah.
We can go to the comments now. There's a comment. I'm going to read it out, and then whoever wants to take it.
Okay.
Someone has asked, what are your experiences with African students whose first language are Portuguese or Spanish, can't speak English, but brought in their numbers to study engineering-related courses, then taught Chinese for 1 year using English language? Is there any experience like that, where people who couldn't speak English were brought into China for an engineering course, but then the course was taught in Chinese?
Yeah, I think there were quite a number of students like this, Portuguese, French-speaking students, even Russians and them who couldn't speak English. It was just basic English. And it was tough. Like, it's actually, it was good, I guess, because it made them learn Chinese faster. Like, it forced them to know the language and so that they'll be able to understand what's being taught. Because even like the tutorials that I was explaining, the people who were willing to give us those extra lessons would speak mediocre English, but it would mostly be Chinese as well. So the African students whose first language wasn't English, it was a challenge for them, but then it actually pushed them to learn Chinese quicker, and also for us to interact and hang out and everything. We just had to learn the language. Yeah.
Right, thank you. Sorry.
We can hear you well.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, very, very clear now.
Okay. I'm just gonna ask if there are any participants who would wanna have any questions they would wanna ask themselves. If not, then we could be able to wrap it up. Okay, there's somebody. Kanayo, okay. Kanayo, you can talk. Unmute yourself and speak.
Please unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, everyone. My name is Kanayo. I'm a Nigerian. I was a student in China, and I've actually been looking for platforms like this to be able to talk my experience. And also, yes, I'm a PhD student as well, no longer in China, and my research is focused on China-African relations. So basically, what I will be asking is about how, although some of us have already touched on it, I saw Kosiso already commented on it, but I would want to ask about how, like, our networks, those that we met in China, how they are able to, transcend beyond with the education they obtain from China, how they are able to, apply this experience to their career. My experience was quite different because I did my undergraduate in Nigeria. And then I had a lot of classmates and then after my undergraduate, I had to go to Confucius Institute in Unizik. But I had a lot of people whose undergraduate studies were not Chinese language, but we had a lot of them come into the Chinese language program at the MSc level, and most of them were studying Chinese language. What I'm trying to investigate is how these people are able to, transcend with the education they got from China. What are they doing now? Are they doing that? Are they doing Chinese related courses? Are they happy with it? And, stuff like these I don't have a specific question, but I just want to raise up this issue and would like the guests to probably comment on it. It's not a specific question actually, but I would want them to probably comment on it if there are people they know that fall within this category.
So if I get your question right, you're trying to find out if those who didn't have very strong background in Chinese language, but then went to do their MSc in a major, but use the Chinese language, how were they able to translate into their major? And after school, how have they been able to continue in the field of their career? Is that it?
Yeah. I would. Okay. Yeah, let me put it in this way: those who had a different undergraduate degrees that are not Chinese language, but as a result of probably going to the Confucius Institute, got the scholarship to go to China. How are they like moving forward?
Okay.
What are they working on? What are they doing? How has this Chinese experience been a blessing or a course to them?
Okay.
Okay, can I answer that? So let me come in. So my first degree was modern European languages. I did French and German and yeah, French and German before I went to China to study Chinese language. But I have a colleague in Huawei Technologies, right? She did business administration in Unizik, right? And
Yep.
she attended the Confucius Institute there in Unizik. Then she went to China, she did her master's. I fail to remember now if what she studied was master's in teaching Chinese as a foreign language or whether she did a master's in business administration. I don't remember. But what I can say now is that she's presently a project finance controller in Huawei. So she, of course, she's using the language, but her major is not, she's not specialized in translating or anything. She's using her course in Huawei, but it was because she knew Chinese language. That's how she came into the company, because they asked me to provide contacts for people who studied in China and spoke Chinese that were willing to join Huawei. That was how she joined. I sent her CV and she came in. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. This is just one person, and I'm sure there are other people too yes, I have other people too that studied in China but did not study Chinese language as a course. And some don't know the language, but they are in Huawei working currently, not as translators or anything.
All right. Thank you, Ify. I think in a part it answers my question. I won't follow up with other questions, but I just want to ask I would like to know what platform is this? How what is it for, where and how people can join if it's a platform that encourages admission, I would say, like new interested members.
Okay, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, fine, we can hear you.
Okay.
Hello, yes.
Yes. So this webinar is being done by Afro-Sino Center in conjunction with the China Trained Ghanaian Professionals Network in Ghana. And we have these webinars every other month. So every 2 months we have this. And if you're interested in Africa, China, Afro-Sino was actually set up. You can give you our email address and you can email us and you can find out any information that you want. What we do is we want to drive research and lead conversations on anything Africa China related in certain key areas to drive the conversations, to show that there's agency, just to add an African voice to the China Africa conversation. So that's why we set up. It's open to anybody who is willing to be interested or who is interested or has a background in Africa China to pick up some knowledge in Africa China. We're trying to form a community of Africa China scholars just to promote and to get people informed on what is happening on Africa China issues. So I'll drop our email address. You can email us and we can have a further conversation if you want. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Is there no further questions? Oh, F1.
Yes, I just want to call on Flo to also give a brief introduction of the China trained African professionals, so that he would have an idea of what exactly is being done in that area.
Yes, so well, first of all, we have the China trained Ghanaian professionals. So we were able to pull together all the Ghanaians who have been trained in China. So we have a network that is very active in Ghana, where we come together, we network, we try to find jobs for each other, especially for the new ones who are graduating from China and coming in. I know some other countries also have the professionals team. But lately, we've been thinking of trying to put together a China-trained African network. So we have people across Africa who trained in China to be able to network on that level, because we know that the skills can move from one side to the other. So I met Pamela, who is the executive director for Afro-Sino Center for International Relations, and we decided to do this in collaboration so that we can pull together all the Africans who have studied in China to share their stories, because people have all kinds of ideas about China and people have different experiences to share, and that would help many people to make an informed decision. So thank you for joining us today. Maybe we'll reach out to you, and if you would like to share your experiences as well on this webinar, we'll be happy to have you. Thank you, Kanayo.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm really glad.
Thank you. Now, before we leave, are there any last comments from our panelists before we wrap it up? Start with Bev.
Yeah, I think that in life there's always a good side and a bad side of something. It's very good to learn from the bad ones and retain the positive one. And though I had good experiences when it comes to learning the language and not so good ones when it comes to the major itself, China was still a blessing for me, because I would say China was, I like to call China as the United States of Asia. Maybe I might be wrong, but I put it this way because in China, all right, especially in Beijing, where I was, you could meet people from around the world, and such an exposure is priceless. I've not heard other people who went outside give such kind of testimonies. Yeah. And being an African and having learned the history of China, I see that China has a lot to teach Africa, especially now that Africa is trying to rise up from poverty and become self-sufficient. Seeing Chinese people working as hard as they work, having the kind of ethics that they have, it left a strong, it really left something good inside of me. I think some of us spoke about it, right? If you're trained in China, there's a certain way, you work, which is different than all other people. I would say if you want to go to China, be well informed, and I believe that's why we have this kind of platform. Be really well informed. I'm looking forward to our government doing better deals in terms of, sending our children to China, being more specific about it, or even individuals. I hope that we can achieve to create such kind of maybe site or organization that can provide the necessary information people must have before they go to China, so that their experience is better. Yeah. China is an amazing place to be. And for those who've had bad experiences there, I hope that you can forgive them. For me, I've learned a lot to see things from where people come from, right? And move forward. So thank you so much for the privilege. I was really pleased to hear the beautiful stories and the contrasts, and I'm so privileged. Thank you so much. Yes.
Thank you. Efua, yes, you closing remark.
Yes. The whole Chinese experience undoubtedly was a very rich experience. We got the opportunity to experience, the Chinese culture, but also the African and European, the Asian cultures as well. However, my observation, right from the way the Chinese scholarships were awarded even to most of the applicants is that Africans did not have the negotiating power. We did not have the opportunity to sit at a table with the Chinese and structure a model that will work for us, okay? And the Chinese at the same time. Definitely is a win-win. But if you look at the way some of the courses were chosen and how the scholarships were given, clearly Chinese people just, you know, threw it on us and we just accepted it. And so it is something that is a little bit troubling because we've had a very long standing relationship with China. And at this point, I think we need to be able to sit at a table and negotiate better terms for the continent. I mean, all over, we are seeing Chinese people coming to countries, you know, taking over industries, you know, and Africans are just there and we're just, you know, taking it like nothing matters or any of it matters, but it's a problem. So Chinese people have a strategy for Africa, but it looks like Africans do not have a strategy for the relationship that we have with China, and it's a big problem because I mean, look at what Zambia is looking like now. Very wrongly negotiated deals and ending up in such, you know, results. I mean, we need to sit up, honestly. Africans just need to sit up and know that, I mean, we have everything and everybody is coming here for it. So why are we treating ourselves like, you know, we have nothing to offer? No, so my desire, a strong desire of mine is for us to really gain negotiating power. Okay, so in all the industries in the even the credit facilities they give to us, to be able to structure it well within us first before we even sit at the table with the Chinese people. But it looks like we lack in this area, and ASCIR is doing quite a lot in this area, and I hope I hope to really see this change. So I mean, apart from having a rich experience in China, I look forward to change in the dynamics when it comes to the relationship that we have with each other. So yeah. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It was beautiful, you know, being on the webinar with my fellow sisters, you know, sharing our experiences and reminiscing on the good times and the bad times. And thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, thank you. I was saying that I completely agree with you. Considering the fact that, sorry, 1 minute.
We can hear you very well.
I was saying that I completely agree with you, considering the fact that
Pam, we could hear you better without the earphones. Yes.
I was saying that completely agree with everyone because considering the fact that Africa-China is here to stay and is a win-win collaboration, as it's been perceived to be, we need to have more agency in directing where we want this relationship to go, to shape the relations and to better the continent. So yeah, it's up to us to develop a voice and make it work and get something out of the opportunities that China brings. Yes, thank you. If there's any last remarks?
Oh no, I just want to say that I'm very grateful. I'm very happy that I got to speak with
with the ladies here, and thank you for the opportunity. And I'm looking forward to more engagements in the future. Just like what Flo said earlier about China trade, I don't know if we have anything like that here in Nigeria, or if you have any contacts or what. I'll be glad to join a bigger forum of the China trained professionals, if there is any China trained professionals in Africa. If we have anything like that for here in Nigeria, I'll be glad. Well, even the one of Africa, of course, I'll be glad to join. Then referring to what Efua said, I think it all boils down to us like trying to get into the government, right? Because unfortunately, the Chinese, they have their strategy. They know what they want. But it's like we Nigerians, we Africans, we've never gotten it right with our leaders. And if the right people are not there to sit on the table when they do the negotiations, they tend to just look out for their pockets. And that definitely is not going to take us to where we want to be as a continent or as a nation. So it's left for us as Nigerians, as Ghanaians, as Africans, wherever we are, to put our heads down and see how we can influence these things from the little places we are, from our corporate organizations, from the NGOs we work with, from wherever, from our little what they call it, estates where we live, whatever we can do to make things better. I think that's what we can do. Maybe starting from this webinar, I hope we can get the right network we have to put our voices out there and see what we can do for our Africa, because this is the only continent we have. Thank you.
Thank you. And then finally, Amanda.
Hi, okay. Firstly, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. It really wasn't what I expected. Like, it was more mind-opening, eye-opening as well. That's a very strong point that Ifwa raised there, because like China knows what they want and they're coming to get it. And if we as Africa do not wake up, we will soon be colonized again, and it's quite sad. But then yeah, I hope it never gets to that again. So yeah, thank you so much for this platform. I would really also want to be part of more that you have that are of this nature. And I hope I didn't scare anyone or discourage people to go to China. It's really a nice place. It's a great opportunity. Like, it's an exposure that you can't compare to anywhere else. You get to learn a lot, not just the Chinese culture, but also other nations and also other cultures and all. And I would say on the Christianity and spirituality, that was the sweet side of it. My experience in China was bittersweet, and it was extremely bitter and extremely sweet. Sweet on the side that it grew my relationship with God. And that's one of the things that I treasure most about China. I grew up in a Christian family, would go to church on Sundays and, would pray and everything like that, but they never really knew how to link the word and the world. Like, you go to church, after church, you step out of church, amen, and you're back to life, like the normal way. But then I think I reached I wouldn't say my lowest point, but I reached a point in China after all the excitement had settled down and I was lonely and homesick and everything. I I I think that's where my relationship with God really started, in China, actually. And then it was actually funny, because when I graduated and I was about to go back home, I was asking God, okay, how are we going to do this long distance relationship thing? Because to me, God was in China. That's where I had my relationship with God. That's where I started to really know God and, to live the word and things like that. So yeah, it was really bittersweet, and it's really nice. I hope I did not discourage anyone. It's a lovely place. It's a good experience as well. So yeah, thank you. Looking forward to more of these actually.
Thank you, Amanda. No, I don't think you discouraged anyone, and we're not here to paint a positive, perfect picture of China. It's people's experiences, what they found of it, what they made of it, and if yours wasn't as great as others, that's perfectly fine. It's your experience. I want to say a big thank you to all of you. I know you're very busy women, availing your time, 2 hours of your time for this webinar. It's been very insightful. I have learned so much. Your stories, I'm sure that the participants also feel inspired and they've learned a lot. We're open, of course, we're going to be having more of these webinars. We're also hoping to working with any of you who have any alignment with Africa China and have ideas of what we could do together as a center. We're always looking for ways that we can promote this Africa China conversation. So I'm sure this is not of our relationship. It doesn't end here. We're always open to having further conversations on where you think that we could work together in certain aspects. So thank you so much. Before, I don't think, are you muted? Are you trying to say something? I'm not sure. You're muted.
She's muted.
Yeah, before you're muted. Okay, I don't think she's.
Hello. Sorry,
Yes.
Pam.
Were you saying something? I thought I saw you talking, but I wasn't sure.
Oh no. Oh, that's
Okay.
fine.
Okay. All right. So thank you all of you, and it's been a lovely discussion. Thank you for making time, and hopefully we would do more work together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Jen.
Bye.